Especially as like youth athletes, like getting in the gym can be scary. Like you look around and there's some pretty heavy weights that coaches might ask you to lift. Being able to handle those hard challenges, you can then translate that into everyday life. I handled something hard at the gym. You might be at school and you might have another hard moment come up and you're just sort of going to channel what you did at the gym and then you crush that and therefore start to build this snowball of confidence that keeps rolling and rolling and you feel like you can tackle the world.
Today, I sit down with Dan Greenslade, D8 Trainings, Strength and Performance Coach, and Strength and Conditioning Coach for the Port Adelaide Women's AFL team. Dan has a Bachelor of Sport, Health and Physical Activity, a Master's in Exercise Science, Strength and Conditioning, and is accredited with the Australian Strength and Conditioning Association at Level 1. Soon to be Level 2. In this chat, Dan shares fantastic insights for both athletes and parents, unpacking the differences between training for an elite level sport club versus training as an aspiring athlete at a semi-professional club. Dan shared what I want to say are secrets on what athletes with dreams of playing professional could do to help them make the jump from amateur or semi-professional to playing at the top level. I'll give you a hint. At D8 Training, we may be able to help. If you're an emerging athlete aiming for a professional career or a parent looking to give your child an edge and set them up with healthy habits that last into adulthood, this episode is packed with practical takeaways you can start applying today. Let's get into it. Welcome, Dan, to the D8 Training Podcast.
Thank you very much for having me on. You hear lots about it working in the gym, so it's good to finally be on this side of it.
We've been planning to have you for a while. We're excited once you started and joined our team at D8 and thought this would be a great opportunity to share all your knowledge.
Perfect. Yeah, happy to get cracking in and see if I can educate a few people out there on a little bit of stuff that I do.
We'll get to know you a bit more, and I guess for those who haven't met you in the gym or even those that have and don't know about you, can you give us a quick snapshot of your background?
I was in year 12 and knew I wanted to work in sport. I just didn't know what it looked like. Loving sport growing up, I knew that was the industry I wanted to be in. And then went to uni, studied a Bachelor of Sport, Health and Physical Activity at Flinders University. Pretty generic sports degree, but again, I knew I wanted to work in sport, just didn't know where. And throughout that degree, had to do 100 hours of placement. And a placement came up with South Adelaide Football Club with their under-16s as a strength and conditioning coach. And I thought I'll just take this opportunity and have a crack and see what it's like. The day I got there, the head of strength and conditioning for the under-16s actually left. So it was just me as a placement kid running the program myself. So I sort of got thrown in the deep end there, but then loved every minute of it out there. Lucky enough, South asked if I wanted to stay on for the rest of the year. Stayed on for the full season and then continued at South for 2.5 years. And then during my second year at South, I did a lot of networking through LinkedIn, just messaging strength and conditioning coaches, high performance managers, people in the sport fitness industry at the elite level saying, how did you get where you want to be? Because I want to be you when I grow up. Lucky enough to connect with Anthony Gallimarino, who was working at Port Adelaide Football Club as the women's high performance manager. And he said that he was looking for an intern just to come and help out a few days a week. And I was like, where do I sign? I was so excited at the opportunity. Was a Port fan my whole life as well, so being able to work at a club you support made it a lot more enjoyable. Went out there for a year, learned heaps about high performance sport, especially two sides, like the field side and the gym side, and then put my head down, worked a fair bit there, gained a lot more responsibilities throughout my year there, and then as of this year, got offered a contract and now I'm contracted to work at Port Adelaide with their women's side as a strength and conditioning coach.
It sounds like you were thrown in the deep end and you swam really well because they asked you to stay.
It was pretty nerve-wracking getting out there and I didn't know what to do and have about 70, 15-year-old kids looking at you and you're like, wow. But I think that's what probably set me up the best was you just had to adapt and you had to learn because that was the only way. Like I said, sink or swim, and luckily, I swam pretty well and got me pretty far.
I find that that's life in general too, or even coming into the gym. It's pretty much sink or swim, just keep going and you figure it out along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. You just got to put one foot in front of the other, and especially in the gym, some exercises look daunting and you see them and you do them and it's like, it's not that bad. So it's just about sometimes you just got to find out by doing. You just got to have a crack and just see where it lands you. Then you get better, and then the skills you learn, and then next time you come in, the next challenge doesn't seem as daunting when you get there as well.
I know of chin-ups personally. I couldn't even do one, and it took me years to be able to get up and do one. And now it's like, one's a piece of cake. Build up to it slowly, but it takes that time and that consistency.
Yeah, absolutely. Consistency is the key part of it. It takes time and constant repetitions and constant skill adaptations and stuff to be able to learn something like a chin-up or something in everyday life, like can apply to any form of work or hobbies or anything. Like you just got to be able to keep upskilling and keep putting one foot in front of the other, and eventually you look back in 6, 8, 10, 12 months and it's like, well, 12 months ago I couldn't do that and now I can do 3 or however it is.
That long-term vision, knowing, okay, I might not be able to do it today or tomorrow, but maybe 3 months, 6 months, I will be able to.
Yeah, absolutely. As I say, like Rome wasn't built in a day. For myself, I wasn't going to close my eyes and wake up. I was working full-time at a football club. Like that doesn't happen. So being able to put the steps in place, and then now I look back in 18 months, I went from interning a couple of days to week to now being there on a contract basis. Like, yeah, makes it pretty exciting when you look back at it.
That was one thing I found really impressive. You started off just by reaching out to people on LinkedIn, having the courage to do that, to now landing the job at Port Adelaide Women's and being their strength and conditioning coach.
I was in uni, didn't really know how I wanted to go about it, found S&C, and I was like, all right, what gets me a leg up on everyone else? Because like strength and conditioning can be pretty niche, especially at the elite level. If you look at Adelaide, like you've got Port, the Crows, Adelaide United, and then it's sort of not much else after that. So my mentality was just like, what's the worst that can happen? So every time I did something, like you'd message someone on LinkedIn, it's like the worst thing that happens is they don't reply, but you don't lose anything. Like I haven't lost hours of stressing. I haven't lost monetary value. I haven't lost anything. And then I said, like, the benefits, the pros outweighed all the cons to doing it. So I just sent, I think in the end, it ended up being about 35, 40 messages to people in Adelaide, Melbourne, connected with a guy overseas and just learning. And then I was like, if I can get the key points from all of them and collate them, then I have a list of about 5 key points. And I was like, if I can do all of them, and then eventually in time, I know I'll be where I want to be.
You landed Port Adelaide. Luckily, you support them.
Yeah, made it really good. All the girls, their first question was, are you a Port fan? And I've been a Port member since I was about 3 years old. So
we said we won't hold that against you in the gym.
There's a few, Crows fans that get around, but I just don't help them as much. No, that's a joke.
You just make them do extra, hey?
Yeah, correct.
Work them even harder.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
It's incredible getting your first gig at the Port Adelaide Women's, so that's quite an elite level. Can you tell us, with your current role at Port Adelaide Women's, what's it like and what's it like working, going from the under-16s to AFL Women's?
The role comes under strength and conditioning coach, but that ends up being a pretty broad umbrella because especially within the women's side, the high performance department ends up being quite small. So it's like the high performance manager, myself and the head physio, we're probably the 3. And then from there, it branches off. There's like assistant physios and stuff. So we have a pretty niche little team. So to do with my role, mainly involved in a bit of rehabilitation. So like the high performance manager tends to look after the whole squad. And I tend to, on a training day, will look after all the rehabilitation. So anyone that's in on-field rehab or in the gym off-feet rehab as well. That also comes under a bit of strength programming as well. So I look after bits of the whole squad and a bit of rehab as well. So you write your whole program, and then from there you've got to make modifications for the first year players and then modifications again for anyone in rehab, or there's certain girls, like some girls don't squat, some girls don't do certain exercises. So being on top of that, and then also after training, I'm in charge of the GPS and bit of data analytics. So all the girls, every training, we're like a GPS unit. We bring them in, download the data. You get a big console of data, then from there you got to break it into its specific drills. From there it helps us make informed training decisions, and then the simple things like setting up training, packing up training, cones out, and those kind of things. There's a lot under it for it says strength and conditioning, which makes it quite enjoyable. So
those are interesting. You mentioned they wear a GPS and you do data analysis. What kind of metrics are you tracking and using?
We sort of come under 3 main ones. So you have your total distance, so how far the girls are traveling in a training session. And from there, that gets broken down into like high speed meters. So anything that's over 18 kilometers an hour. And then you have your sprint distance, which is anything over 22 kilometers an hour as well. So they're sort of our 3 main ones. And that helps you make your whole periodized plan is based off sort of those 3 metrics. We have a few extra metrics, like we have a max velocity percentage, because for like hamstring tendon health, we get the girls to sprint at least once a week and want them hitting over 90% of their max velocity. And the joys of having live GPS means we know exactly after if they've done it or not. And then there's a few other factors like you can get. There's actually like hundreds of metrics, but they're probably the main ones we look for when we use it to make training.
You mentioned you look at the total distance. Is that because every training you're measuring how far they run and doing the average? Like what would you use total?
If you're planning it over like 4 weeks, you might go like 3 weeks up, 1 week down. So just ran like you might go 15 kilometre week into an 18 kilometre week into a 21 kilometre week, and that's like your peak week. So that's the biggest week that they're going to do. And then you'll deload it back down into about a 17, 18 kilometre week again. And then based off like a 12-week pre-season, you might have 2 or so peak weeks where you're just trying to get them so the girls can withstand what we call their like worst case match load. So you get all the data from their previous season, and it might be like the worst match, like the most distance and stuff they've covered, might be, say, 10 kilometres with about 1,000 metres of high speed and sprint. So from there, we program 150% of that. So you might be looking at about 15K with 1,200 high speed, for instance. We know that if they can withstand that session, which we give them on the track, we know that then they'll be able to withstand sort of any game that they come under as well. And with the total distance, we cut that down into all the drills. So we'll know that when they do drill A, we know the specific distance, speed, and sort of meters per minute that they're traveling throughout the drills as well.
You actually train them harder than it would be for the game. Is that so that when they play the game, it's easier and they can go all in?
Yeah, correct. We know that their body, tissues, muscles are going to be able to withstand the demands of a game. So if you don't expose them to any match game training loads, and then the biggest session they've ever done is a 5-6K session, and then all of a sudden they get stuck on the ground because they can't get their rotation and they have to try and withstand a 10, 11K game, you're putting them under severe injury risk because it's a load that they haven't experienced before. So we know that throughout the preseason, if we can expose them to about 150% of what they would experience in their worst case match, from there we know that with, again, injuries, you can't prevent every single injury, but we know with confidence that we've done the utmost we can to help prevent any sort of overuse injuries during a game.
So that's the training for pre-season. So you overtrain them so that they can withhold the match. So when they come to the match, they're ready and it seems easy. But what about during the season? Do you train them at that high load as well?
It's a similar sort of 3 up, 1 down that I mentioned before. The loads are significantly reduced. In season, you're trying to promote a lot of that recovery, especially with AFL. It's a fair contact sport, so you get a lot of that body soreness from contacts. And again, it's quite a demanding sport, like physical and both aerobic running. If it was an in-season week, like your Monday, Tuesday, you're sort of emphasising that recovery. You'll have your main training session on a Wednesday, and then you might have another lighter session later on in the week, which then in turn prepares them for the match again on the weekend. So in season, the sessions tend to be a lot shorter. Still want to get them moving at that higher intensity. You don't want them just coasting through the sessions because, again, hamstring, especially like lower limb, needs that high intensity training for muscle and tendon health. So making sure that, like we were talking about with the max velocity percentages, making sure we still stay on top of our key monitoring criteria. That'll help us throughout that in-season phase. And then you sort of get towards the end of the season, everyone's carrying something, everyone gets banged up. That's the joys of a contact sport. So it's just about visualising that training load as much as we can to help prepare the girls as best as we can for the in-season periods.
Could you share an example of a moment where you were able to use the data and it changed the direction of someone's training or load management or helped them in some way?
We had one, probably it was about middle of last year. Every pre-season you always pick up a couple of injuries. It's just the way that it goes with the high amounts of loads. So put all your data into, we have our Excel monitoring dashboards like every club everywhere sort of has. Looking at all our graphs, and we saw that one of the girls had spiked in her acute high speed. So that acute's like the last 7 days of high speed. And it was outside the threshold that we sort of consider like quote unquote like safe.
When you say spiked, what do you mean by spiked?
So spiked as in her high speed meters over that week were a lot more than we had planned and expected it to be. So based off the plan, she should have gone in a linear trajectory with quotation marks around the linear, but she's sort of gone building, and then spiked up, which then based on her chronic load, so that over her last 4 weeks, what she has under her belt wasn't enough to withstand what she had done that night, came out future training and then pinged a hammy. So from there, we can then use the data, be like, okay, is it a training load error or is it a potential error that we're unsure of? Go back through the data. Yep, had the spike in her load. And then from there, put her into, like, she's into rehab, get her hamstring back right, and then we can further manage it. So that happened last year, and then later on in the year, we had similar thing where we saw another girl spike, and then based off what happened the first time, we knew that we could reduce her loads quicker and get on top of it earlier to help prevent that hamstring injury potentially from happening.
It sounds like looking at the data, there is that real potential to prevent injuries just by looking at the changes.
Yeah. Not all injuries can be prevented, but with things like monitoring, it's trying to give us the best chance to prevent anything from happening as best as we can.
It's similar like going into the gym. You can't be guaranteed that you're going to prevent diseases or injuries, but by having strong muscles, you're less likely as you age to have problems like osteoporosis.
Having that foundation behind you, know that then if, as you said, if things come on, you've already had that increased muscle mass. So if you have to miss a week or two because of things that happen, because life is a crazy journey that everyone's on. So sometimes you can't get in there for a couple of weeks because of things, but then you come back in and you're already better suited to them when you were the first time because you have that work behind you as well.
So you're coaching the AFLW, which is professional team. There's a high performance team that supports them. And then you've got the under 16s in South Adelaide. How different are those two coaching environments?
They have their major differences. So obviously with the AFL girls, we have a lot more time. So like they're training there all day, like 2 of the days we're there all day. So we have the time. We don't ever have to rush anything. We have time allocated for training, time allocated for recovery, time allocated for gym. Whereas compared to with the under 16s, it's like similar to any sort of local club. We're out there 2 nights a week. The kids come after school, run them through their training. And then from there, we sort of just trying to educate them as much as we can. For the 4 hours we have them in a week, we don't really know what they're doing outside of that. Like they're running around and stuff at school, which is great. But when it comes to Monday nights, are they sitting up gaming all night? We don't know. So it's about the time availability is what we found be the biggest challenge, especially to do with like the first thing that goes in a training session we run over time is conditioning, which as a strength and conditioning coach, I think it's the most important part. So trying to and fro a bit with the coaches about trying to get as much time as we can to be able to then give the kids the most we can. You sort of mentioned before a bit of staffing stuff as well. In the under 16s, it was just me. Whereas with the AFL, like the team I mentioned before, so many different eyes looking over so many different things. So nothing really ever falls through the cracks. And a little bit as well, you struggle a bit with the buy-in sometimes with the kids. The AFL girls know what it requires to play AFLW football. Whereas with the kids, they come into an under 16s program. It's the first elite program they've been in. So it goes 16s, 18s, and then if they're good enough, hopefully to the AFL. Some of them don't understand the requirements that it takes. Like you got to do pre-season running. You have to look after your body properly. You have to hydrate, you have to nutrition, you have to sleep. I'll assign them stuff, and usually early in pre-season, everyone will do it because they want to impress you and they want you to think that they're doing everything they can. And then it sort of starts to peter out through the year. So it's just keeping encouraging with the kids that buy-in, that you just got to trust what I'm giving them and trust what they're doing.
And I think that's the biggest thing between elite athletes and as you're coming up, especially with kids. And a lot of kids are just gifted naturally. It's a lot easier, and then heights make a difference. But once you get older, starting to get into the elite, want to make it, there's a lot more dedication and time needed. What did you find were the biggest physical or mindset gaps between the youth players and professionals?
Building on what you said before, like when they come into the under 16s program, they're the best players out of their local teams from around the region. So working down south, we have the Southern Football League and the Greater Southern Football League. So they're the best kids out of those teams. So they're used to probably running wherever they want, playing in the midfield, getting all the footy because they are the best. Then once they come out to this program, they're surrounded by the other best kids that are in the other teams as well. So that's when it comes down to, we always used to try and encourage them, what can you do to make yourself 1% better than the bloke next to you? So the big sort of differences we noticed was like work ethic. Some of them, it happens every year. They just decide that it just gets a bit too hard, and the running and the commitments and the training, it just gets a little bit too difficult. So that's one thing you notice. And one thing we sort of talk a lot about with the port girls that we tried bringing in a bit with the kids as well is like little quote like handling hard better. So wanting to be a good athlete, you've got to be able to handle hard things, whether that's, again, conditioning, getting feedback, watching vision, working on your weaknesses, like being able to handle those harder moments better. In terms of physical, obviously the age difference creates a lot of strength differences, but the big one I probably notice is athletes like movement capacity. So just how they move, like the professionals most of them look like they're running on water. Like they look flying across the surface, where some of the kids, because they're still growing, going through things like peak height velocity, they struggle with movement because they're growing and their body's changing and their limb length is changing, and they're neurologically they haven't adapted to how their limbs are moving. So they're probably the big key ones that we notice, especially throughout the kids coming through.
I find what you mentioned on the mindset quite interesting. And I was having a conversation with 3 girls, and they were saying, oh, the coach just doesn't like me. She keeps telling me where I'm not good. To me, it sounded like feedback, but I got where they were coming from. They were 10, 11 years old. And I went, how about you change the story? You're telling the story that she doesn't like you, whereas change the story to, well, she likes me so much that she thinks I'm important enough to give the feedback.
Feedback should be looked at as like a gift. Being able to get feedback, it's just making you, whatever you're doing, whether that's work, in the gym, on the field, just in everyday life, it's making you a better person, making you a better athlete, making you a better gym junkie, whatever it is. Like feedback is a gift. And I feel like we tend to look at feedback in such a negative light, like you were mentioning. Oh, they're picking on me, they're telling me everything I'm doing wrong. But for one thing you're doing wrong, there's probably 100 things you're doing right. But we just don't have time to go through the 100 things you're doing right. Whereas if you can fix these little things, it just makes you so much better in, again, everything you do. So I reckon if we start looking at feedback as more as like a gift rather than a negative, as I said, change that mindset, it can just make us so much better in everything we do.
And how can parents instill that belief in their kids?
I think it's just about the encouragement. Say kids coming home from football training and coach told them that they need to work on their ball drop kicking, for instance. Whether that turns around and looks like, okay, that's an area of weakness, let's spend encouraging your kid to spend time to go work on it, because it can be easy just to lock yourself in your room and think, well, I don't care what coach says, like, I'm going to do what I want to do anyway. But everyone's looking out for the best in you anyway. So I think as parents, they just need to start reinforcing the coach's message, like, okay, this is your area of weakness. They've given you a golden opportunity to become a better footballer. Let's go out and make you a better footballer. Or if it's in the schoolroom and teacher says that you struggle with spelling, and it might be like, okay, well, the teacher doesn't like me. No, teacher's giving me an area to get better. Let's work on this weakness. And then you'll look back on it and be like, wow, I'm so much better than I was because I put my head down and worked on areas that I was like identified. Because especially sometimes with ourselves, we don't notice the things that we're doing wrong, or we don't notice the errors we're making. Whereas you get someone with a different set of eyes and different set of shoes looking out and noticing those things, like everyone's just trying to make each other better.
Definitely. And if you look, is it Steph Curry now, the best 3-point shooter that's ever lived? What is it? He practices, is it 1,000 shots every single day?
Probably, yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
That I heard. And he's doing the same shot. So even though he's the best in the world, he's still doing those shots. So whether it be football, practicing the drop kicks, soccer, the free kicks, we need to encourage that, yep, you can keep getting better and you're not always the best. How do you think with younger players you can strike a balance between building athleticism and not overloading them too soon?
So luckily, any sort of younger athletes that ever come through like an elite program, like an under-16s level, you're just looking at simple things like efficient load management and like periodization of running. So planning out their running to make sure that we know we're testing them enough for that resilience that we're talking about before, but then also making sure that we don't overload them too much. But especially with younger players, what we find is if they're really talented, footy is probably a good example, like a Sandford club might want them, and then a state program might want them, and then a school program might want them. All of a sudden, they're doing 4 or 5 trainings a week and playing 2 games on the weekend, which for anyone, that is not viable. And so making sure to encourage them that when they're not with your program or when they're not in your care, encourage them to look after themselves and recover, do all the right things mentally and physically to then prepare themselves to rock up to their next training session, whether that's with you, whether that's with school footy, whether that's with state commitments, making sure they can prepare themselves to be the best they can when they're out there. It's always like a to and fro kind of conversation. So I remember one of my first couple of weeks out of South Adelaide, we had a coach development with the Sandford, and the high performance manager of Sandford, we came up to me and introduced myself because I was the only sort of new one out of the under 16s and 18s for all the Sandford clubs. And he gave me a really good piece of advice. He told me, you can get the kids as fit and as strong as you want, but at the end of the day, if they can't kick and catch, they're never going to make it anywhere. So it's pretty interesting to hear that, because especially strength and conditioning coach put a lot of time in, but it's always a give and take of we need them to get enough of the skill But then if they are neglecting physical preparation, whether that's gym, whether that's field conditioning, it's going to take away from the skills they're learning. You could be the most talented, skilled athlete, but if you can't run more than 100 metres, you're never going to get the ball. Whereas vice versa, if you're the fittest elite athlete, running-wise, strength-wise out there, but you can't kick and catch, you're probably not going to get picked. So I feel like at the moment we do tend to overlook it a little bit, but it's hard because as a scale, it can so easily get thrown the other way that all of a sudden we lose the skill component, which then is going to damage our athletes even more. So a little bit of toing and froing, but at the moment, I think it does get overlooked, physical prep, more than it should.
And I know with soccer, we have a lot of soccer players that come into the gym. They're training 2 nights a week, club, 2 nights a week, academy, and they're not doing the strength and conditioning. So they're not getting that whole body workout, which I know tends to be higher for injuries as well.
Especially with kids, they just love anything that's a skill, like especially with soccer. They love being on the pitch, small-sided games. They're playing soccer at lunchtime with their mates, which then probably as coaches, we need to look back and go, right, they're probably doing enough of the skill component. So how can we raise the bar to make them an overall better athlete? And that's when the physical strength and conditioning side of it comes into it. So especially like what we run here at D8 with the kids gym, like it gives them such a good chance to come in, get guided very well under expert eyes to be able to work on these physical capacity issues they may have, which then, especially as they're growing up, learning how to move properly and lift properly is just going to further better them anyway.
We had the former Socceroo Ivan Franjic on the podcast, and if he could do anything differently when he went from semi-pro, semi-professional to professional full-time soccer, was gym. He goes, I felt like I was behind for a good year and a half before I finally caught up, because they do it in the high-performance team there.
Absolutely, and we noticed that even in the elite level with the Port girls, like you always get your first-year girls come in, and you can tell the difference between some of them that have been lifting since they were, say, 14, 15 years old, or some that they might not have been in a gym very often, and you can tell by the way they move. And then you got to take more time with them. And another presentation we had from the Crows, strength and conditioning for their males, when I was out at South, he came out and told us all they ask for us is just to get up like under 16s and 18s, just moving properly, squatting properly, hinging properly, because then when they get to that AFL system, if they're lucky enough, or the elite system in whatever sport they're doing, the strength and conditioning coach there doesn't have to spend time teaching them these fundamental movements that we can do at a junior level. Coming into the gym anywhere, being able to get the youth to be able to move properly is just going to further better them up for no matter what they do. It might not be as great as elite sport, but if it's just continuing to gym as they get older, or potential reducing injury risk or overall health, it just further benefits that stuff massively.
And it just sets them up for good habits going forward, because it's only a small subset that make the elite level. And then the rest, if they learned how to do gym, that's gym for life as they get older to stay fit and healthy.
Absolutely, and it's never going to leave you. Like, you don't lose those skills. It might be wild between innings, but you're never going to forget how to do those things.
How old do you think athletes should be when they start to do gym?
So I'm a big advocate of the earlier the better, because I feel like, especially when people look at gym, it has the stigma that it's just throwing weights around and trying to lift as much as you can. But gym's actually a lot more to that. You look around and it involves things like jumping and landing and coordination and fun movements. It's not just getting kids on bench presses to see how much they can lift. So I think it's the earlier the better, because the more we can teach the coordination of being able to jump and land on 2 feet properly, being able to absorb force when they land properly, being able to coordinate, balancing with like passing things around, being able to throw, being able to sprint, being able to jump. Like, it's all crucial movements that it's going to benefit them in sport, but it's going to benefit them in everyday life. Like, coordination, we do it every day without even knowing. So being able to get kids in earlier and just starting that process, because it takes time. And then you can tell the difference between the kids that have been coming into the gym since they were 10, 11 years old compared to the kids that are coming in at 14, 15-year-old, because they don't have those fundamental skills that the other kids have been learning and mastering for about 4 or 5 years. So I'm a big advocate of the earlier the better.
Here at D8, it starts at about 10 years old, just because we want them to be safe and be able to hold the weights. My son actually did gymnastics. So when he was younger, 3, 4, he started gymnastics and did it for a good 2, 3 years. And then he started playing soccer. I got asked by the coach, they go, did your son do gymnastics or some sort of strength training? And I went, yeah, he did gymnastics. He goes, you can tell, because he's just more balanced, more coordinated. And I found that that's benefited him.
That was a form of strength training where he probably didn't touch a weight, didn't touch a dumbbell at all. But strength training is such a bigger umbrella than just throwing dumbbells around. It comes into, the jumping, as you said, the coordination, the landing, the movement, staying light on your feet, all of those sorts of things. So that's where I think the stigma needs to change a little bit around the word or the tone of strength training and being in the gym. It's not just lifting weights. It's about being able to move and jump and land properly as well.
Giving them that extra edge.
Absolutely.
What do you wish more parents and coaches understood?
With the parents, it's just almost sort of ties back into the whole conversation of just strength training isn't just in the gym with dumbbells. Understanding that being in the gym and strength training is, like I said before, we'll keep harping on about it because it's a hill that I'll definitely die on. So being able to jump and land and run and sprint and all of those things as well. And it also teaches factors like resilience and courage, especially as youth athletes, getting in the gym can be scary. You look around and there's some pretty heavy weights that coaches might ask you to lift, but being able to handle those hard challenges, you can then translate that into everyday life. I handled something hard at the gym, you might be at school and you might have another hard moment come up and you're sort of going to channel what you did at the gym and then you crush that and therefore start to build this snowball of confidence that keeps rolling and rolling and you feel like you can tackle the world. So factors like that, I feel like, get neglected too much with the gym as well. And with coaches, with that youth level as well, it's just the importance of the gym and field conditioning. Like I said, tends to be the first thing that gets neglected when we come around to training on a Tuesday or Thursday night. It's more as a coach, we just need to educate, being able to have an open line of communication with our head coach and just educating this stuff's really important. You need to give me time. And then being able to do with whatever time you get, being able to create the best product you can.
I know you're a big advocate of the 7 planes of movement. I feel like you've mentioned a few of them as we've spoken on. Can you just explain that in simple terms and what it is?
So 7 planes of movement come under the fundamental movement patterns. So they are a squat, a hinge, a lunge, a push, vertical or horizontal push, a pull, which is vertical or horizontal as well, twisting, and then the final one's gait, which more simply is running and walking and jogging and sprinting and those sorts of things. So they're the sort of the key fundamental patterns that anytime, especially with youth athletes, if you're running a warm-up for field training, I feel like if you can try and hit those 7 movements and get them doing that, and all of a sudden they're doing those movements twice a week without them even knowing as well.
Is that something you think is important and good for adults to do as well?
It comes under everyday life. We would do all these movements probably before 10 o'clock in the morning without even knowing. Your gait, you get up when you get out of bed, you might lunge as you have to pick something off the floor, you got to push a door open, you might have to pull a door open, you might have to squat down to pick something up off the floor. So these movement patterns are just so critical in everyday life, we don't even know it. So being able to do these properly and just keep doing it, because if you don't move it, you lose it. That's a saying that we throw around a bit in the gym. So being able to do these movements because they are in everyday life and they will be in everyday life until the day we're not, it is so fundamentally important.
The other day I came home and I threw my bag onto the floor, sat down, started typing away on the computer, got up and I tripped over my bag. Completely my fault. But as I tripped, I caught myself and was able to go back to normal. Whereas I thought, had I not been doing gym, had I not had the strength, I could have easily fallen flat onto the floor and broken my leg. And that's how a lot of falls, broken bones and injuries happen, because we're not, even as we get older, our body's not adapted to be able to do the moves.
Absolutely. And that's something we preach, especially in the Forever Strength class as well. They'll be doing an exercise and they'll come to you and ask you what is this targeting? And you can tell them the physiological aspects, so what muscles it's targeting, or you can just try and relate the movement to an everyday movement that they do. So you might be doing a squat and they're like, why are we squatting down? I'll be like, well, what happens when you drop your bag on the floor or you're in the garden or something like that? So it just shows that these movements, just because they're in the gym, we still do them in everyday life. So they're still just as important.
I saw on Instagram a clip once and he looked about 70 years old. He worked 1 year to be able to lift, it was about 25 kilo kettlebell. So you can see the progression started with 5, 10, 15, 20, and then got to the 25. And then the reason he goes, I worked on this was because when I was putting up my Christmas tree, my granddaughter was coming all the way from overseas. So he could lift her up to put that star on the Christmas tree. And that's a priceless moment.
Absolutely. And they're the things that'll be with you forever. You don't lose that moment.
There you go, I'm getting all emotional. So you've been at D8 now for 3 months. What are you enjoying about being part of the team?
The first and foremost is the people that come in. It's probably the first experience I've had in like the private sector. So coming in and coaching everyday people and just coming in and like they're the nicest people that come around and having a chat with them. But then knowing that they're here to make themselves that little bit better, it's such a fulfilling moment that they walk in, they probably complain to you about how hard everything is, but everyone leaves with a smile on their face every time. So that's probably the bit I enjoy the most. And further under that is just challenging people to push their limits. Like, doesn't matter if it's a junior gym class or an adult class or a forever strength class. They might grab the 10s and you tell them that you got to grab the 12.5s. And they look at you and they roll their eyes at you and then they do it and think, oh, that was actually pretty good. So the feeling of seeing people succeed in what they do, it just nothing beats it. It must release the endorphin in your brain because it makes it feel so good. So they're probably the two bits I love the most as well when being out here.
It's such a positive environment. Everyone's coming here because they want to stay fit and healthy as well. You do from junior gym, so the 10 to 14, the athletes 15 plus, adults, and forever strength, which is generally 60 plus. How do you adapt your coaching style for different age groups and goals?
It's pretty interesting question because it's almost under all the same umbrella. It's just different to how you do it, as you said, to each class. So first one, big one's probably the cueing and instruction. So for example, like with the junior gym, the 10 to 14s, I'm getting them to look me in the eyes like they're nodding to make sure they agree, because with them, the cognitive aspect's a little bit more difficult to an athlete or above. Whereas with the forever strength class, I take my time making sure I speak nice and clear, because the hearing problem can be potential problems for them as well.
I don't think you've got a problem with the hearing. Your voice projects perfectly. I can even hear it from the other room.
Yeah, true. That's a good point. Yeah, being in the field with 70 kids makes you have to project pretty loud. So just being able to change your tone and the way you explain things is a big one between the four classes. Movement quality as well. So it might push you, like you're pushing everyone to move really well, but with some people there might be physical limitations. So especially looking towards the older clientele, they might have, like if someone's coming back from a hip operation, it's going to take time to get them to move properly. So you're not going to expect as much out of them as you're going to a 16-year-old athlete that wants to be the best at their sport. So being able to understand what your baseline acceptable standard would be changes between the classes. And the final one's like the progressions and regressions as well. So depending on the type of athlete or the type of person in the gym, they might not be able to do some of the movements. And that's okay. Some people, you'll teach them as much as you can, and it just won't click. And then they might come back the next week and get it first time. So being able to understand on the spot what's something that's going to target the same muscles or the same motion that's not the same movement, or how can I change the way I'm instructing it, because you might go to someone and say, I need you to point your toes out, and it worked perfectly. Some people might not have that visual proprioception of being able to turn their toes out. So that's probably how it changes between the classes.
You mentioned you encourage people to go up in weight. How do you know that they're ready to go up in weight?
Most times I sort of have two key criteria. I look at the speed that they move the weight at, and I look at their facial expressions. Now everyone's going to be putting on facial expressions down the gym, but the key is the speed they move and the facial expressions. So you can really tell the difference between someone that's just coasting through, because they'll be able to lift it with constant tempo and speed throughout the whole lift, like might be the 8 reps or the 10 reps they're doing, and their face won't move. Might be able to even hold a conversation. So if you know that's happening, you might be able to push them up. Obviously, you're not going to go from 10 kilos to 20 because that's just not viable. But it might be just having the conversation, okay, here's a 12.5. Some of the people, you'll have the conversation, they'll be like, I reckon you can do more. They might be like, I'm not feel comfortable. And you'll be like, all right, you do it and I'll watch you. And if there's anything wrong, I'll grab them off your hands. There's some of the people you get to know quite well as well, and you'll be able to just give it to them and you know that they'll respond with it as well. And that's in every class. I have a couple in the forever strength, I reckon they think I pick on them, but every time they grab a weight, I grab it out of their hand and give them one heavier, because some people just need that constant people pushing them along the way.
And I think too, it's a mindset bit as well. They're fearful, they're scared. Yeah. Can I do it?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone gets sort of that fear of failure. Like you don't want to get a weight up for 2 of the 8 reps and fail. But I always try and tell people that I'd rather you try and fail than not have a try at all. Like if you're doing dumbbell bench press, for instance, and you get 15 kilos in both your hands, you've never done it before, and we're doing 8 reps and you get 2, I'd always rather see someone have a try and get 2 and it's not even failing, get 2 and not be able to do anymore, than coast through it 10 kilos each. So I always try and encourage that, especially with the athletes as well. I always tell them I'd always want you to try and fail, or I shouldn't say fail, it's not really failing because you're still doing it, but try and not be able to get any more than just coast through it. So.
How do you think people can change their mindset about that and realize they can go up, and even though it says 10 reps, doing 6 or 7 is still okay if it's a higher?
A lot of it can come back to the trainer. So whether it's like Nevin or myself or Brooke, the three of us, whoever's in there, just having that conversation. Honestly, do you think I can do it? Because I know myself, I'm always going to say yes. That also gives them the reassurance. I think a lot of people just seek that reassurance, just being like, okay, if they think I can do it, well, then I can definitely do it. So that's probably the first one. The other one's just probably coming in and just being willing to try as well. Like, it can get so easy if you come to the 6 p.m. class every Tuesday and every Thursday. You almost get into a routine. And then without knowing it, you sort of might feel like you're coasting a little bit. So just being able to come in with that open mindset, like, all right, I'm going to try a weight I haven't done before. Is it going to be successful? I don't know. But I've put myself in the best position to be able to then lift that weight because I've been here consistently, done all the hard work. Like, if you look back, you've got a streak of 32 weeks. Like, you've got the strength to do it. You just need that final person to push you over to do it.
That encouragement. I know in class I'll be like, all right, let's go up in weight. I'm never talking to anybody else. I'm actually telling myself out loud that I should go up.
That positive reinforcements as well, or just someone, as you said, someone just to tell you to do it, and then you just need that final little. You're 99% of the way there. You just need someone to push you that last percent, and that's what we sort of try to make sure we always do in the classes as well.
And that's one of the advantages of D8 training, having that coach there to not only watch your form and guide you, but encourage you to go up.
A few of them, once they come in, they've, like we were saying before, they've learnt the lift. They're really good at it. So the next step from there is, all right, we don't need to teach you how to squat because you know how to squat. How can we get you to squat heavier? And then that's the next challenge that, as a strength coach, you always find really exciting because the more athletes lift, it makes you feel better.
Do you ever have any trying to squat too much and you have to tell them to go down in weight?
It does happen. Like I was saying before, I'd always rather try someone to try too much. But then at least for there, it also helps them understand where they're at. Because if you do 10 the whole time throughout, you don't know where your limits are because you've sat in that comfortable range. So I've had it where you get adult athlete, junior gym even, they come in and they think, especially the junior gyms, they think they can lift everything in the world. And we just got to know that sometimes that's just not realistic. So it's about having that conversation. You think you've been doing 15s, you think you can do 20s. How about we try meet in the middle and try 17, for instance? So it does happen, but I'd always encourage people to have a crack and then move down rather than coast their way through.
Yeah. All right, be honest. Do you have a favourite D8 class to coach and why?
This might be a pretty political answer, but I love them all. I know that's probably what every trainer that's come on and said they love them all, but I do have a real soft spot for the Forever Strength class because it was the first class I ever took by myself. So, and that's the first one I sort of learned everyone's names in, and I tend to have my more regulars on a Tuesday, Thursday. So have a real soft spot for the Forever Strength class. A couple Port fans in the Forever Strength class as well, which makes it a bit more...
That's why. Bit biased.
Yeah, a little bit more enjoyable to talk footy, but nah, I enjoy them all. All of them have their pros and they're all in different ways. Like seeing kids move better is such a fulfilling feeling, or you get your adults that have had to come in from work and are able to leave it at the door and come in and lift some heavy weights. But yeah, probably a soft spot for the Forever Strength class, I think.
I was hoping you'd say whichever class you're in, Ann-Marie.
That was probably the political answer. I should have started with that, eh?
Forever Strength's a great class. And what I find really impressive is they're also inspirational.
Yeah.
We have 70-year-olds, like 2 of them, which we had on the podcast as well. They're still running Masters Athletics, breaking records for their age group and just excelling.
I go for a run and feel like I'm sore for weeks, and then I see them running longer than I have, and it makes me feel like I should be getting out there. But as you said, the inspiration of it is just seeing them coming in, and you start speaking to them in the gym, and some of them's goals are just to be able to hang out with their grandkids, and like you hear that and it's like, wow, like you're making such a big difference in their life. It makes you feel awesome.
There was one, we got a Google review, and they said that after coming for so many months, they didn't need to use their walking stick.
That's not a PR in the gym. That's not a 100-kilo bench press or something. That is an everyday thing that means so much more than those numbers as well. So,
all right, let's move to the rapid fire section. So 5 quick questions, short, quick answers. Favorite lift in the gym?
I actually pondered over this one for a little bit. Bench press or bicep curls?
I like the bench press. All right, what's your least favorite gym movement?
Anyone that's been in an adult class would know it's the ab wheel rollouts. I'm really horrific at them, and it's my focus area to get better on. So yeah, ab wheel rollouts.
You've said it now on the podcast. We'll be watching. What's the goal? To get all the way out and back?
Absolutely. Yeah, I want to get all the way out and back. I'm about, I think, if I'm generous, maybe a third of the way, but it probably feels like less than that. In a couple of months, I want to be able to demonstrate it properly. So
I was in the class with Brooke the other day and it was the ab wheel rollout and she goes, oh, this is Dan's favourite exercise.
Yeah, it's becoming common knowledge, unfortunately. I have to give the pre-warning every time I demonstrate it. I'm like, just do as I say, not what as I do. So,
Favourite book?
Atomic Habits by James Clear.
I love that book.
It's an awesome book. Got a copy. I've listened to the audio book probably once a year. It just helps ground me as well. If I ever feel like I'm getting off topic with things that I enjoy on my habits, it just helps me sort of circle back and focus on the key ones.
Favourite fitness influencer to follow?
I've got two. So there's a guy I follow on Instagram called Angus Bradley. So he's pretty big on the full body movements and he's real straight to the point, like we call a spade a spade. That. And the second one is any form of strength coach, high performance manager on LinkedIn. So I'm a massive LinkedIn, as I sort of talked about earlier. Love scrolling through and getting contents from heaps of different fields, different sports, field sports, court sports, just being able to indulge in as much content as I can. So LinkedIn's probably my big one. So I follow a few people on there.
And favourite sport to watch?
Yeah, probably AFL. As you can tell, I've worked in there. I've been a fan my whole life. So AFL and AFLW now as well. It's probably should say AFLW first. So love watching the girls and then the boys as well. So.
Oh, this was great. And it was such a good conversation. But one thing I got really out of this discussion today is if you really want to play at that elite level, you want to do what the elite do, you really need to come to the gym at least once a week.
Absolutely. Especially coming into programs like Everyone's Good. How can you make yourself that 1%, 2%, 3% better? Because when it comes to wanting to get into that elite level, it's that 1% that divides you getting a contract for 4 years or getting delisted. So being able to get yourself in the gym and being able to have that as your ace card is just so valuable. Can't preach it enough.
I look at runners, sprint runners, for example. Recently I was at the Nationals and in the 100 metres, the difference between first and eighth, so the top 8, was less than a second. So it could be just that one little difference.
It's like what they talk about in Formula One as well, is like they wanted to make 1% better in 100 items and all of a sudden your car's 100% better. If you think about that like your body, if you can make 1% better in, don't have to be 100, but 100% better in 100 things, you're going to be 100% better than you were the day you started.
Definitely. Little atomic habits again.
Correct.
If people want to follow you, follow your journey, where can they find you?
So I have my Instagram page, which is Dan Greenslade Coaching. So it's been a little bit on hiatus, but now that I've finished uni, going to be sliding back into getting some content and stuff out there as well. LinkedIn as well, it's just my name, Dan Greenslade. So post a little bit of stuff on there, more just share things that I find really insightful. And probably the best one is, follow Port Adelaide's AFLW team. So probably a lot of Crows fans out there, but jump on board, Port Adelaide's AFLW team. If you ever had a game, you'll see me on the bench walking around holding some whiteboards and stuff up. So they're probably my 3 big areas if anyone wants to keep up. And it's also just come talk to me in the gym. Just ask me what I'm doing because I love a chat, as everyone in the gym probably knows. I like to talk. So, just ask me what I'm up to and I'll always have a chat to you.
Come book a class with him at D8 Training and then hopefully we'll start getting you on the Instagram as well. What is one habit that someone can start today to make a positive impact on their training or vitality?
I reckon prioritising sleep and always pushing yourself harder than you think. You might think you're working as hard as you can, but you don't know what your body's capable of until you put it to the max.
I love that. And I love now that sleep's becoming a lot more of a focus because it's really important for recovery, for your body to repair, so you can perform at the highest, not just in the gym, in life in general.
And especially with the, continuance emergence of social media, so easy to just have your phone there and next minute you go to bed at 9 o'clock and you look on your phone because you've been on or watching TV and it's like 11:30. It's like, wow. So again, atomic habits, if you put your phone downstairs, you're not going to be on it.
What does dominate mean to you?
Setting yourself up to excel in everything that life throws at you. Being able to get yourself in a position that no matter what you're going to be faced with, in sport, in life, in work, that you are going to be able to excel at what that is.
I love that. Dominate everything you do. We're so lucky to have you at D8 Training. So thank you for coming onto the podcast, but thank you for taking the position and coaching our classes.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
What an episode. I took so many insights from this chat that it was tough to narrow it down to my top 3 highlights. However, here we go. First one, strength training gives you the edge. All professional athletes, whether in AFL, soccer, netball, golf, or beyond, have structured strength and conditioning programs designed for their sport. While some semi-professional clubs provide this too, time at training is limited, so adding extra strength sessions can give you that critical edge. Consistency is the key to standing out. If you've made it to a semi-professional club, you're already one of the best from your local level. But now you're a small fish in a big pond. Regular strength training sessions helps you grow into that bigger fish so that you can stand out. And lastly, probably my favorite takeaway is that we need to look at feedback as a fuel for growth. Feedback isn't criticism. It isn't a coach or a teacher picking on you because they don't like you. It's an opportunity to improve. They're doing it because they want you to get better. Learning to see it that way helps young athletes and all of us thrive. At D8 Training, we offer strength programs designed specifically for athletes from age 10 and up. Our programs are built to help young athletes dominate their sport. I'll leave the details in the show notes, or you can visit D8, the number 8, training.com.au to learn more. And if you can't get to us in person, still reach out. We may be able to help you virtually with a customized home or gym-based program. Thank you for listening. If you know someone who could benefit from hearing the episode, please share it with them. If you found value in this episode, leave a 5-star review and subscribe to our show. It really helps us keep bringing you great content. Until next time, dominate your life.